Hello guys, today I'm going to react to Mournvil's recent video where he expresses his opinion and gives us 5 important things that should be changed in the possible upcoming God of War 1 and 2 remakes. If you do not know Mournvil, he's a fellow God of War YouTuber and his channel mainly focuses on God of War theories, discoveries, challenges, personal stories and other stuff like this one. Anyway, I have watched his most recent video at the time I'm writing this script and found myself doubting or flat out disagreeing with some of his takes.
My first demand: extended gameplay. The gameplay needs to be much bigger.
His first demand is to make the game longer, which I personally disagree. I believe the length of God of War 1 and 2 is fairly good, and if they have to increase it, they should only increase it about 1 or 2 hours max. Quality over quantity is the right choice here. Many games, including the recent God of Wars, drag out so long and make the game feel grindy and repetitive by its end. Even if we exclude the walking and the poorly placed sections of any huge game and replace them with more combat encounters or puzzles. Would that have a positive effect? What I mean by that is that if a game is shorter, all of its positive sections will shine more than its worst ones. This will take long to explain and maybe I will make a separate video to make you understand it even better. But overall, long games take a lot of time to put together, put more pressure on the people who are making it, and some of the times it feels unpolished, boring and rushed due to deadlines.
Just make some long ass puzzles or some trap rooms where you fight and solve puzzles to escape each floor or something. Don't get me wrong, both games have their fair share of difficulty and puzzles already, but a little bit more won't hurt, unless you're a speedrunner. For example, this section in God of War 2 is just breaking the nose of this statue, and you're against the Sisters of Fate. You just beat the Kraken, and now you're straight up against the Sisters, a boss fight right after a boss fight. So, I think the room should be extended and should have some encounters before you reach the Sisters, and not just this spot.
He says to add more puzzles to make the experience longer. Maybe that sounds good on a first playthrough, but I believe that most of the puzzles in the God of War franchise kill replayability. Whenever I find myself in a puzzle area where I already know the solution, I just wanted to get it done faster to proceed to the game. He actually has some valid points here and there. For example, when he mentions to add more encounters after defeating the Kraken and you immediately proceed to fight the Sisters of Fate. Now, that's more of a pace issue and he is right. But come on now, the Kraken is basically the puzzle. The Sisters of Fate, although they act more like a boss fight encounter, they still include puzzle elements like freezing time and destroying the mirrors one by one. That's why God of War is so great after all. It isn't always just fighting.
My second demand: make Medusa worthy. Medusa in God of War 1 just feels like a normal Gorgon. First of all, Medusa has the ability to teleport. She literally teleports to you in God of War 1 to fight you. Why not just make it her ability? Make it so that she goes underground like the Wraiths and then gets out, beaming you, and you turn to stone, or she throws out those balls or whatever to turn you to stone. Secondly, give her some minions to control to make the fight harder and more intense. Make it so that you can just insta-kill them by grabbing them. Kratos just grabs a snake and rips it in half. Make her teleport to, like, a chandelier, and the only way to get her down is to use Poseidon's Rage.
He's probably right, although I do not hate the Medusa boss fight. I think she varies a bit from the other Gorgons in terms of moves. For example, she's not bounceable like the other Gorgons. To the other Gorgons, you can infinite bounce them to their death. Her moves are a bit quicker, and she doesn't get so much stun from your attacks like her counterparts. Pretty much I agree with every single thing he says here. God of War 1 lacks boss fights, and making Medusa like they did with her sister Euryale is going to pay off. Many creative ideas from Mournvil here.
To my third demand: increase the number of challenges. I'm talking about the challenge of the gods and titans. It could be all the gods that helped you throughout your journey. For example, things start off with challenge of Poseidon, where you finish, like, 5 of his challenges. Then you get to challenge of Zeus, then Artemis, and Hades.
He suggests adding more challenges specifically to every god that helped you in God of War 1. Sounds cool and I like it.
Is the very hard difficulty. You know, very hard difficulty is just very hard, but after you start very hard a second time, it's just not as hard as the first time. My advice is to make the very hard difficulty different from the other difficulties. For example, in this first encounter of God of War 1, where you fight undead legionnaires, how about some cursed legionnaires as well to go along? Or, like this encounter where you fight 2 Cyclops, Why not just throw 2 Gorgons here as well? My point is, add more enemies or different enemies if the player is playing on the harder difficulty.
He's basically saying that the hardest difficulty isn't as hard as it should be. That happens for a lot of reasons, of course. He knows better his moves, enemy patterns, enemy attacks, exploits, muscle memory, you get the idea. Once you beat the game on the hardest difficulty, it only gets more and more easier after each playthrough due to you learning the game better. He suggests that the hardest difficulty should mix things up and add more different kinds of enemies to make the game more challenging. While his points stand and technically will make the game harder, it does not mean that this will have a positive impact. Encounters in God of War 1, as I previously stated, they require strategy, fast thinking, response time, and feel like a dance. I will give you an example. Would you like Theseus at his second phase, while he summons minotaurs and throws projectiles, to also summon 1 or 2 sirens? While that would be harder for sure, and for some people would definitely be more fun, it would drag out way more because you will constantly have to find openings to attack. I don't know what to say at this take. I guess I agree and disagree at the same time.
Fifth and last demand, the God of War 2 weapon switch. So my idea is to press L2, it doesn't change your weapon. It instead changes the magic selection to weapon selection. I'm not finished yet. Now there's a very cool mechanic in God of War 3 that we all like. It's the quick swap. What if we put that in God of War 2 as well? That could work wonderfully in my opinion, but Mournvil, how? Well, R1 is a pretty useless button in God of War games, only used for interacting with things like chests, doors, levers, and save points. What if we press R1 to quick swap into the next weapon? It would make God of War 2 the game of the fucking century if done right, if the devs do that.
Now, the fifth take is my favorite one. The God of War 2 weapon switch is not that good, although I have gotten used to it over the years. What he suggests here is to use L2 to switch between magic to weapons and vice versa. You will end up having to use the D-pad to select which weapon or magic attack to use and execute it with R2, just like God of War 3. Now, while this is a great idea and would work like wonders, I personally have an issue with it. You see, after playing God of War for such a long time, I can't see myself pressing R2 to pull out Zeus's Fury or Typhon's Bane. Luckily, the solution is pretty easy. Just make R2 do the switch instead of L2. Mournvil's idea is great. He extends it even more by adding the quick weapon switch that we have in God of War 3. The R1 button is used to interact with the environment, like opening doors, sliding boxes, and grappling. He suggests that the quick swap should be done by pressing L1 plus R1. Definitely works, but for me it feels a little bit uncomfortable. This quick swap in God of War 3 is performed by pressing L1 and X, which is much more comfortable in my opinion. All this needs is a little tweak. Now, what does L1 and X do in God of War 2? Now, this move is not that useful. What if we took the Icarus lift and change it to L1 plus R1 and make L1 plus X make the quick swap instead? Wouldn't that be even better? This is where we reach the end of this video. I will leave a link of Mournvil's channel down in the description in case you want to see more of him.